Hi, welcome to Nap Time Nutrition. I'm Yaffi Lvova, registered dietitian nutritionist and owner of Baby Bloom Nutrition. And with me today is the fantastic Leslie Ringler, who I met when she started a mommy group called The Village, and it was just based in giving support to each other and honoring each other and building each other up. And so it was a great experience, and that's where I first learned about planning your life around your cycle. And so it seems to be a departure from my normal nutrition-based topic, but the truth is that anything that can help build your confidence as a mother, as a friend, as a wife or partner, as a cousin, as a checkout person at Whole Foods, whatever it is, we need to just honor that and harness that energy and use it to our benefit. We need to understand our biology and how it works. So with that, I'm going to ask for an introduction from Leslie. What are we talking about today?
It's a great question. Well, I'm excited to talk about, we had a little chat before. I'm excited to just share a little bit about, well, really whatever you want to know. But I'm by no means an expert in this arena, but I have for probably the last 5 to 7 years really lived my life by my cycle. I started doing a lot of research. I had babies 8 and 10 years ago, and I felt the sanity slipping away, and I felt like there needed to be a better way. And I feel like we are culturally we're expected to act and react like men in general, and I felt like that wasn't working for me after I had children, and so here we are.
It makes sense. And we were talking just before the broadcast about how we're expected to be powerful women, but we're expected to harness that power by pretending to be men, by putting on pants, by ignoring our biological urges, by any number of ways. But the truth is that when we embrace our femininity and understand how our body works and play to our strengths, this is really where we can benefit, where we can live our lives with a little more sanity. And I mean, nutrition is my platform, but really sanity is really the major platform. Better living through sanity. So, okay, so let's talk about the cycle. Okay, so everyone's pretty familiar with the idea that we have different hormones going on, and I'm going to show this fun slide. Show this fun slide here. Having some technological issues here. So here we have ovulation. This is the whole cycle, and we have the interplay of estrogen versus progesterone. And the truth is that there are more hormones that come into play. We have FSH for one, and there's a lot going on. But this is good for simplicity's sake. So different hormones bring out different strengths, and by playing to our strengths, we can build confidence in our parenting and our relationships. And so that's look at this roller coaster. I mean, if you went to some like mall and they were having some roller coaster, you'd say, oh, that looks like fun. But this is actually our biology, and so is not actually so much fun.
So why don't we start with maybe the most the part of our cycle that causes the most insanity or pain for women, which would be our premenstrual phase. Is that good? Should we start there?
Let's start with PMS. And I did an Nap Time Nutrition on PMS and nutritional management, but that does not by any means make us as hormonally even as men are. So this is really helpful information as well.
Right. So, I mean, I like to look at our cycle as 4 different phases. I know it's a much more complicated than I'm going to talk about here. But the premenstrual phase is kind of thought of like, if you were thinking about it as a season, would be like our fall, right? Mm-hmm. So we're starting to slow down. Things are, you start to feel that shift and transition from summer to winter. There's a lot of stuff going on inside of us. We start to, I don't know if this is you guys or just me, but I start to get really picky. I start to notice a lot of details. Like the leaves are falling around and I notice every single one of them. And it's a great time. It's a time that causes a lot of pain for women. But one of the things that I found to be so amazing as I started studying this was like, it's a time also where we can let go and we decide like what's really, really, really important to us. And it's a time to start letting go of those things that are not necessary. It's also an incredible, like practically speaking, it's an incredible time to start using that pickiness to finish like the details of a project, to do your specific meal planning for the month. It's a great time to declutter. And so you can focus and harness that energy and use that superpower for good rather than creating a lot of tension for yourself or your family. Does that make sense?
Right. And so we were talking also about how so those are your strengths, but your weaknesses during that point might be that creative, the creative aspect. And so we were talking about how that might relate to meal planning and how during that week you might want to stick to something easier, the backup meals, the crock pot, anything that's made a little bit, that's less effort.
Exactly. I was telling Yaffi, like, you're better because so you probably have crock pots ready, but I'm like that whole week I buy frozen dinners at Trader Joe's. That's like and I just keep it really, really simple. But it's a good time though to use the detail planning to do your meal planning for the month as well. Those really awesome meals that you want to make during your pre-ovulation and ovulation phase.
Right. So you're using that week to be more mentally creative than physically creative.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. All right. So go ahead.
No, you go. I kind of started in the middle of our cycle, but we'll go. So after obviously premenstrual, you go into menstruation and you start bleeding. In my house, we just say, "Mommy's bleeding." I wanted this to be another reason. I have 2 daughters. And so growing up, I felt a lot of shame and like I needed to hide my period. And I wanted my daughters to feel really comfortable as they came into, as they started their periods. And so we just say, "Mommy's bleeding." So this is a time of bleeding. And one of the things I think that women forget, that this is a really important time to rest. I also know that women's lives are very busy and that we have toddlers hanging on us. But if you build it into your family, your cycle into your family, which it takes practice and usually somebody to help you figure that out, you can also build that into your family so that your kids and your partner honor that phase. So that mommy does need to rest. Mommy does need time to bleed. Mommy does need time to go into herself, without getting too spiritual. It's a good time to go into yourself and figure out, like, what am I here to create? What are the seeds I'm planting? And just it's a reflective phase. Does that make sense?
Sure. So what are some of the practicalities of that, as far as the to-do list, as far as the menu, as far as the afternoon activities?
Well, I mean, just like if you like to work out, a lot of people like to ignore that rest phase, but rest is just as important as the working out phase, because your workout isn't going to be as effective. So your creative projects aren't going to be as good. Your meal planning isn't going to be as I don't know. What is meal planning? I need your help with meal planning.
As well-rounded?
As well-rounded. If you don't take that time to reflect on, and it's really a time to reflect and rest, kind of looking back over the first part of your cycle, which we skipped the first 2 phases, but
we'll go back. We'll get back.
We'll get around. Start with the pain, but
okay.
Also, what was I going to say? I would
reflect.
Well, rest and reflect, but really rest and reflect. But also, I mean, there's practicalities around actually managing, physically your bleeding. I've found ways. I used to be one of those people that was on the couch with 800 milligrams of ibuprofen every 3 to 4 hours. And there's ways to manage that physical piece that I think is much more nurturing and honoring of our bodies as women as well. So,
yeah. Okay. So let's move on to the next phase. So
the next phase. This makes me so nervous. Okay.
You're doing great.
Okay. So where we probably should have started is like the pre-ovulation phase. So menstruation is day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And in my journal, like I write the day that my the day of the cycle I'm on, so that I can keep track and I know what to expect. So day 5 or 6 is going to be your pre-ovulation phase. And this is like springtime, right? We just went through winter and this is springtime. You've just emptied out. It's kind of like you're coming into a new version of yourself. And I think for me, and I just want to say this too, everybody's cycle is really different. And for me to I've been doing this for 8 years now. So it started with me really tracking my cycle and figuring out how I felt at each stage, because it's going to be so different for everybody, and people have different wounds around different phases of their cycle too. But this is a time I feel really playful. I start to feel energy again. It's a great time to plan those play times with your kids, or special dates with your kids or your spouse. Watch out for over indulgence or risk taking. It's a time a lot of women, like to shop. Some people like to shop, and it's a time where if you track it, you might see that you spend more money during this phase. So
that's very helpful.
Well, I'm just, practicalities.
Yeah.
But it's just a really good time to take advantage of that energy. If you're doing any creative projects, lots of ideas. It's not a great time to really hone and focus on them, but it's a great time to make sure you're writing these things down, kind of inspiration or muse, if that makes sense.
So you can take those ideas, and then in the premenstrual phase, when you're more detail oriented and you're staying at home, kind of taking care of yourself and eating your crock pot meals, that's when you look at those ideas and flesh them out more.
Yes, exactly. Or actually detail work of that. Yeah, like the paperwork. I'm amazing at paperwork during premenstrual. I get everything done. I literally schedule my paperwork during that time of my cycle because I'm so much more efficient. Because if I did it during my, pre-ovulation, or I call it the maiden phase, if we're going to use archetypes here, I don't get anything done. I'm squirrel, 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 So,
so maybe I should save my dishes for. Don't worry, not actually.
It doesn't work that way. I know.
Yeah, that doesn't work. Okay.
But maybe assign it to somebody else during your maiden phase so that you can enjoy it more.
I don't think that's going to happen, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Okay, I know. I tried.
So then I guess next would be the actual ovulation phase, but that's, so I'm going to show a picture here that was from Lisa Lister's Instagram, and she's written a lot about this. And just heads up, if you go to her Instagram, there's a lot of profanity and a lot of possibly objectionable art. So just know your sensibilities and know if that's going to work with you or not, and know that I didn't send you there explicitly. So here,
it's fine. Don't.
Ovulation, the 3 days a month when you feel sane. Yes. And I love this picture.
Everybody do that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the ovulation phase.
Ovulation is amazing. You can all probably feel when you're ovulating. So, this phase is associated with the archetype of mother. It's a time that you obviously can get pregnant. So actually your features even become more symmetrical and appealing, which is kind of crazy. It's a time that you're a much better communicator. It's a time to plan those really important conversations with your partner because you're much more magnetic and able to maybe, what's the right word? I'll just say negotiate better. We'll just share in our conversation. We're not trying to manipulate at all, but I'm just saying it's going to be more attractive. And so, those are times to plan those really important conversations. I think I was a couple days ago. And so I had a really, good heart to heart with my 10-year-old. That was a good time to plan that conversation. If you're interviewing for jobs, schedule them during ovulation if possible. It really does make a difference. Social outings. So I'm an introvert by nature. I will schedule my social outings around ovulation and pre-ovulation because I'm just much more outgoing. I'm more willing to take risks in social situations. The other, premenstrual, menstrual, I kind of stay home, but I schedule that every month. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, you're just planning for your biology. And I think it's wonderful to just know what's going on with the body and take it into account when you're planning, because it's just really playing to your strengths. And there's definitely nothing wrong or manipulative about that. It's just no, it can, some of the verbiage is coming across a little funny, but no, this is great. Playing to your strengths, knowing what your strengths are and when they are, so you can feel more confident. And I think that's great. So we talked about how to use this to keep sane, what to focus on different parts of your cycle. And I think that's very helpful. Self-care. Can you talk a little bit more about self-care?
So if you're looking at, people talk about how do you stay healthy, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So when I'm looking at self-care, some of the things, so I try to plan it. This does not always go perfectly. We all know this. But
it goes perfectly.
But when I'm looking at self-care, so part of self-care is, is rest. I know you're laughing at the resting. You're like, okay, rest and reflect. But I plan it so that like when I really need to find some downtime and rest and alone time, I'll plan that during my menstrual phase. If I need to get my eyebrows waxed, that's a self-care thing. I might go out during my maiden phase. If I need to have coffee with a friend or socialize in order to, honor my friendships, I might plan that during my ovulation phase, because I'll be a better communicator and probably a better friend at that point. So I'm trying to think of what other types of self-care would be important. So you guys are mamas of little ones. So
yeah.
No, sorry, I'm just joking.
No, I just try to get the self-care in however I can, but I think it's helpful to have kind of a roadmap, and this is what it is. It's a biological roadmap to what your strengths are. So, okay, relationships. You talked about, if possible, schedule important conversations during the ovulation cycle, and of course, that is not perfect advice because you can't schedule every conversation. But with things that can be scheduled, with the big things that can wait a little bit, it's ideal to wait for the ovulation phase when you feel human for 3 days.
Yay. Well, I'll just do that. Every time you hear ovulation, go like this. Okay. I would say one of the big conversations though you could have during ovulation is to talk about your cycle with your partner. I know that is not, a lot of people feel embarrassed or don't, and it sounds like a conversation they can't have, but I would say that has been also one of the biggest things for my sanity, is that my partner knows exactly what phase. We literally put it on the family calendar. So everybody knows what phase mom is in. And so we can ask for, extra, dessert, or is it that we just close the door and throw chocolate at her door and don't talk to her for 5 days? So not that that's really what happens, I'm joking.
No, of course.
but it also, as I've continued to share openly, even though at first I was kind of embarrassed, my partner, Steve, I'm like, hey, I'm premenstrual right now. He's like, okay, got it. He understands now how to adapt his behavior and when to, in order to make everybody's life happy.
When to talk about certain things and when to wait, when to suggest certain outings and when to suggest others.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember, and I'm just new at this, but a while ago, whenever I'd get upset with my husband, and I knew that it was my hormones and not something that he'd actually done, I would just get in his face and yell PMS and then walk away, and he'd laugh because I'm recognizing I need to yell right now. And
that's amazing. I love it.
It made me feel better to yell, but I'm not yelling at him, and he knew exactly what I was doing. So maybe there's a more constructive way to do that, and so I'm going to explore that.
I think
after this conversation, I might think more about that.
Yeah, or just Steve will just slide some chocolate over on the table. Here you go. That's it. You're a nutritionist, so dark chocolate's good, right, for that phase?
Dark chocolate is full of antioxidants. I'm never going to badmouth chocolate, though. Yeah, you know what? It's important to feel satisfied. It's important to know your body and to know what's going to satisfy you. And if you get a craving for chocolate, it's important. It's important to have a square of chocolate, or half a bar of chocolate, whatever it is. So if you don't, if you get caught in this thing where like you think chocolate isn't healthy and you try 5 different ways to do a substitute for chocolate, what you end up with is an overstuffed belly, but a not satisfied mind. So if you know you're craving something and that you can just have some of it and the craving will be satiated, just go for it. There's no reason to pull back there. Yeah, it's fine. And if that little square turns into 2 squares, that's fine too.
Okay. This is why you were named.
Okay, fine. I was just named today's dietitian of the day, and that was like half an hour ago, and I'm super excited.
That's like so amazing.
I know, thanks.
Part of the reason because you let everybody eat chocolate.
Well, no, it's just, honestly, it's recognizing biology and going with it rather than fighting it. It's recognizing what you have urges for and knowing how to incorporate them in a balanced way. And so that's my approach with nutrition, and that's my approach with this. This fits in with that. Yes. Just recognizing and honoring your biology rather than fighting it. Yes. We have certain biological impulses, and some of them are louder than others. And the hunger impulse is a fairly loud one, unless we stop listening to it. Our biological impulses that are more related to our cycles are quieter. And so it takes an extra effort to listen to them. And that's why I'm having you on, because it's natural, but it's not natural to hear those signals and understand them and know what to do with them. And that's why this information is so valuable.
And I think it's quiet until you actually start paying attention. I think we have been inundated with, I don't want to say the P word, but we're taught to suppress those as women, and that we need to function linearly, and we're not linear. We're cyclical beings. And so once you actually start paying attention and you start charting and not just charting like physically, but charting emotionally and creatively, socially, you start to recognize them, and they start to shout at you. And because it is so part of who we are, it's part of our ancestral, it's part of who we are as women. And so I'd say, yes, it starts quiet, but it does get louder. And then you start to understand for yourself, because it's so different for every woman, how do I relate to the world knowing this about myself?
Right. And it's shouting at me right now about intuitively, like I'm big on intuitive eating and intuitive nutrition. And this is just more intuition. The thing is, let's say you've been dieting and you fall off the wagon. You ate a Milky Way. Milky Ways are so good. Okay, I ate one the other day. Anyway, they're so good, but the next day you feel guilt and shame because you're used to restricting yourself. And so this is the parallel with what we're talking about now, is that you get angry and you yell at someone, and then you feel guilt and shame about yelling at them. And so if you had known where that anger came from, if you knew where your biology was, sometimes people are jerks and sometimes they make you angry and you yell. That's one thing. But if you're yelling because of your own biology, you're going to feel bad about that later. It's better to just be in contact with yourself and know your biology and know how you react and why you might be feeling that way. And then you can have more positive interaction with those around you and eradicate the guilt and shame that comes with all of like regretting your actions.
Right. And then, and you're more forgiving of yourself, and you're more gentle with yourself, because I think as women, we're so hard on ourselves, and we're like, I just screamed at my child. And it's like, okay. And then we beat ourselves up instead of just going, wow, I'm a human being. And not only am I a human being, but I am a human being with hormones going like this every single month. Like we need to find forgiveness for ourselves as well. Like you said, the shame and the guilt are just things that are going to perpetuate that cycle. And so if we can get ourselves out of that or become more aware of that, then we're going to do everybody a favor. But, most importantly, ourselves. So.
Yeah, I think we have so much guilt and shame in our lives, and it it just seems to increase with every life phase. And maybe that's just because of the life phase I'm in with small kids. But, you know, first you're single and then you pair up and then you have kids, and each new addition is just more opportunities for guilt and shame. And especially when you have children and you just feel guilty about everything, you know, oh, he tripped and fell and skinned his knee at camp. I wasn't even there, but somehow it's my fault.
It's your fault though. Right.
I should have raised him to not trip and fall. Like, you just feel guilt about everything, things that are your fault and things that are not your fault. And if we can just give women information to help eradicate that guilt and shame, that's where we need to be to offer that support.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was reminding me of a book called Power versus Force, and it just talks about the different emotions and where they are and how they perpetuate either the same type of beingness, or if you can bring more awareness to different things. Right now we're talking about our hormones and our cycles. You can bring yourself, it's just about finding more forgiveness. It's called Power versus Force. And shame and guilt are on the lowest rung of our emotions. So when we're feeling shame and guilt, we really want to take time to reflect and think, what part of this is mine, but what part of it can I release, right? During your premenstrual phase.
Right. Okay. So I get that. I have another book that was not as gentle, but had the same point, and that was The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up Something I'm Not Going to Say. It was such a life changer, and I think it's got the same points that it gets across. And I would encourage anyone to read that. Of course, some people will need to hide it in their car so their kids don't start repeating some of the language. But also, if you find that you're in the car a lot by yourself, I've heard that particular book is fantastic on audio. So.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Can you imagine all the profanity? I hear it's really funny, but anyway.
I just gave that to my best friend. Yeah, everybody should read that.
It's a great book. Anyway, we're getting a little off topic now, but thank you so much for joining me, Leslie, and it's great to see your beautiful face again.
You too, Yaffi.
Thanks. So join me next week for Nap Time Nutrition every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Arizona time, which is currently 4 p.m. And I say currently because we don't change the clocks here because we're not nuts like the rest of the world. And it's also 1 o'clock on the West Coast, and I believe 9 o'clock a.m. on Wednesday in New Zealand. So shout out to the Kiwis. And I have a lot of really fun ideas coming up for topics. And if you have any suggestions, please comment below. And as always, here's my call to action. I want to know what your premenstrual dessert is. What do you crave? I mentioned Milky Ways. I really kind of prefer Snickers at this point, but I want to know what you like. So put that in the comments. And thank you so much for joining me. See you next week.